Chi, it's my pleasure to introduce to you our next speaker, the Shadow Minister for Business, Environment and Industrial Strategy, and someone I've worked with over many years for the pursuit of science in Parliament, Chi Onwurah.
Hey, thanks so much. Thanks for what you're saying. Thanks very much for that introduction, Stephen, and thanks also for what you said, almost all of which I agreed with. That won't last long. So it was a real pleasure to be here. I know it's a very hot day, but I tell you, I always get a spurt of energy when I know that science is in the room. And I have to say that science isn't in the room often enough in Parliament. So really big welcome to you all today. So yes, I'm Chi Onwurah. I'm Labour's Shadow Science Research and Innovation Minister. And I want to say a big thank you also to all the learned societies who have organised this Science Links Day, and particularly obviously to the Royal Society of Biology, and a big thank you to Stephen Bend there as well. I mean, this is my fifth Links Day, I think, but I don't know how many more we'll be at before I equal Stephen's tally. As we said, it's great to be actually in the same room with so many scientists and engineers. Before I entered Parliament, I worked as an engineer, and I always say that I entered politics and engineering for the same reasons, exactly the same reasons, a number of decades apart, to make the world work better for everyone. I believe now, as I believed then, that politics and science are the twin engines of progress. And our country has a really proud scientific tradition, from Isaac Newton to Stephen Hawking, Ada Lovelace to Rosalind Franklin, and today Leslie Yellowlees, Jocelyn Bell Burnell, and Newcastle-born, have to get that in, Peter Higgs, discoverer of the Higgs boson. Britain's scientific giants have bestrode the world, and our science sector continues to lead the world, powering our economy in the process. And I'm a strong believer in science for science's sake. It's part of our innate humanity to seek to push forward the bounds of knowledge. As Stephen said, science helped save us from COVID, though at huge cost in terms of the death toll across the world, and much of the world is still struggling with that, with COVID. But I also believe there's science that will help us to address the great existential threat which we face now, climate change. As a child, I was inspired into engineering by the marvels that I could see around me in the Northeast and the space race. Today, it is net zero that is a challenge that inspires me both as an engineer and a politician, but more importantly, it is inspiring millions of young people, young researchers, young students, children, to look around the world and see how science and engineering and their participation in it can help save our planet, transforming the world in the process. It's a huge challenge, but it's also a huge opportunity. As I said, I believe in science for science's sake. But the economic importance of science is also absolutely clear. Science is key to our economy, it's key to our growth, and over the past 2 years, it's been absolutely paramount to our health. Investing in research and development and in science is a no-brainer for our economy. The Campaign for Science and Engineering, who I'm sure are in the room, found in their research that for every £1 invested in science by government on research and development, we get back 20 to 30 pence each and every year in perpetuity. And research from King's College London and Brunel University also showed that for every £1 invested in medical research, we get back 25 pence to the economy each and every year. And the reason I say these figures is that it's really important to understand for politicians, I think in particular, but for all, those for everyone in our country to understand and to recognize the economic importance of science and the role it plays in rebuilding our economy. And I know that Science Minister George Freeman is going to be speaking later today, and this is where we diverge in terms of what we think. And George, says very many great things about science. Again, I agree with just about everything George says as well. But unfortunately, that's not being reflected by what is actually happening. Indeed, George represents our 5th change of science minister in less than 3 years. Never mind a long-term funding plan for science. It would be nice to have a long-term science minister. And I'm glad if that was George. And it's not that these ministers are doing nothing. It's that they're launching initiatives which don't result in real change on the ground. So we've had the innovation strategy, we've had an R&D strategy, we've had a science plan, we have an Office for Science and Technology strategy, we have a brand challenges, we have had industrial strategies, though not pursued, sector deals, the Advanced Research and Innovation Agency, at least one, but I think 2 actual reorganizations of UKRI, and yet we do not have we're still lagging far behind our major competitors in the proportion of our GDP which we invest in science, at 1.7%, whilst the average is 2.4% and Labour's target is 3%. And as the framing of today's day implies, international collaboration is absolutely imperative to the future health of UK science. But I know this is the #1 issue that I hear when I speak to scientists, when I visit universities, when I visit labs. We stand, on the edge of abandoning or leaving the participation in European Union's Horizon funding program. That is the world's biggest science funding program, 95 billion euros, and the UK has historically got more out of it than we've put into it. And that's not just about the money, actually, it's also about the international prestige on so many researchers' careers having, being Horizon funded shows the point at which their careers have really taken off. And moreover, just the innovation depends on international collaboration between disciplines, between people from different places, people from different backgrounds. So losing access to Horizon is already impacting our science community. Scientists are already leaving, international projects are being told to relocate, and jobs are under threat across the country. And I just want to emphasize, and I'm sure you know this, there is no quick and cheap way to replace Horizon. Implementing new multilateral or bilateral programs at short notice will mean compromising on ambitions, and with the greatest diplomatic skills in the world, and I don't think our Prime Minister has them, you cannot hope to recreate an international collaboration of over 30 nations. So, and also the EU framework program. And in terms of what Labour would do, well, I think in the debate yesterday on tearing up the Northern Ireland Protocol, which unfortunately passed, David Lammy, our Shadow Secretary of State, said it out quite clearly. We would negotiate. That's how you get international agreements. You negotiate. You don't go around saying you're going to tear up one agreement and then asking if you can make another one. But another challenge that I just want to touch on also is levelling up. To be clear, I'm not entirely sure what levelling up means. I've listened very clear to all the debates, and I still haven't had a definition of it from a government minister. But it is clear that the scientific potential of our country is not being equally supported. Funding for London, the South East, and the East of England is higher than the rest of the country put together on a per capita basis. And for example, the South East received twice as much per capita as the UK average, more than 10 times the per capita spend in Wales. And in order to drive in, this is not about taking taking money from the southeast and giving it to the north. This is about ensuring that the scientific potential in every region and in the context of a growing scientific budget is fully realized. And unfortunately, the Levelling Up White Paper only maintains the current regional balance of R&D spending. And in addition, the replacement for the European structural funds, and a significant proportion of the European structural funds, that's regional development funds, went on research and development, and their replacement represents a 60% cut, plus there is no ring fencing for research and development spending, and hard-pressed local authorities will find themselves using the money to make up for 12 years of austerity. So those are the concerns that perhaps you can help raise with George this afternoon. As a science superpower, Labour believes that we require purpose, power, resources, and leadership, and that is what Labour and government would provide to drive the high-skill, high-wage, high-productivity economy, which cannot happen without science at the forefront. So as a science leader, we've committed to raising research and development spend to 3% of our GDP. That's not quite where Israel and so South Korea are, but it's at the leading edge of nations rather than being at the back. We also want to ensure that we get more private sector spend, and we're looking, Rachel Reeves just launched a review to ensure that tech and other startups have the financial environment that will support their growth. We want universities to be engines of regional growth, driving regional prosperity. And we also understand the key, as I said, that science holds to mitigating climate change. So we've committed, and it's our only spending commitment, we've committed to investing £28 billion per year in reaching net zero. So that's benefiting science stakeholders broadly and supporting scientific clusters as well. And I just finally, just wanted to say a little bit about people, politics, and science. Now, we're in a much better place now, I think, when it comes to gene editing than we were for decades with regards to genetically modified foods. But I think, you know, we need people, we need to engage, science needs to engage better and more effectively with the vast, with the people of this country. That's why we talk about building an innovation nation. People need to trust science, but also science needs to trust people, needs to listen to people, having scientists and parliament and engage with parliamentarians as the representatives of the people is an incredibly important part of the journey towards having an innovation nation, and I think to a certain extent restoring the trust between scientists and the people, which some of the non-positive examples of technology and the influence on people's lives, which I see every day as a constituency MP, whether it's sort of the surveillance society or the concerns about climate change or the concerns about the impoverishment of the world, so the implications of that. So I'm very pleased to see so many scientists here today. I hope that we can engage better and more productively. UK science is a huge point of national pride, and it's provided us, as we said, with the tools to fight the pandemic and to beginning to provide us with the tools for the greening of our economy. But the speed at which the scientific discoveries are made reality, the benefits that they can bring to society here and across the world, that depends very largely on political will and support. And that depends on having politics and science working together. And that gives me great hope that science will answer the pressing questions of today and work with politicians to ensure that those answers make a real difference. UK scientists have shaped the modern world as we know it, and that is why we need to put science at the heart of our economy, our culture, and also our policy making. That's good for science, it's good for the economy, and it's good for the country. Thanks. Thank you very much. I'm going to take some questions. I don't know what, I'm not looking at the clock, and I think
yes, no. If you are happy to take some questions, then I'm happy to field them. So maybe you want to take one or two. Yes.
Yes, I'm here from Australia, actually, and I'm very delighted that you mentioned the Horizons project. And I'm wondering how the United Kingdom, since it's left the EU, is going to replace that funding for the United Kingdom and the Commonwealth.
Well, excellent question. I should just say that I was in Kigali last week for the CHOGM, and you know, as the chair of your party parliamentary group for Africa, so many of the discussions that we were having was around science and the role of science and research in addressing some of the challenges that many Commonwealth countries are facing, and particularly climate change, the mitigation, the impact to the loss and damage of plant habitat. So obviously I'm not speaking for the government, and George Freeman was speaking later, but the government made a commitment in its 2019 manifesto, in which it was elected to power, that firstly we would remain part of Horizon. Well, there's also a commitment to of and ready Brexit deal, but anyway, let's not go to that. Firstly, we'd remain part of Horizon, and also that Horizon funding would be guaranteed, if you like. The replacement for Horizon funding would be guaranteed, so that there wouldn't be uncertainty. I mean, the fact is that, and if you, I don't know how many early career scientists are in the room, but when you talk to the uncertainty, so we're still, we're whatever it is, 2 years on, and the uncertainty, the fact that we're still not part of Horizon, we still haven't been on associates, that's impacting so many scientific projects. Now, what the government has said is that if we're not able to associate, then they will bring in a replacement program which will have the equivalent funding. I think that's the commitment. However, as I said, it won't have the equivalent prestige. It can't have the equivalent level of collaboration. And as for having the equivalent funding, well, I'm just going to put this as nicely as I can, but funding commitments and promises from this government have not been realised. If we talk about the Dementia Moonshot, if we talk about the commitment to double science spend by 24, 25, which has now been pushed out to 26, 27. So there was a commitment to keep the funding, but we have yet to see that happen. And in the meantime, the uncertainty is eating away at our scientific base. And just say that, as I said, Labour would negotiate to ensure that we are part of the Horizon programme, would have done that, and we believe in increasing science funding.
Perhaps one final question. One more. Yes, gentleman at the back.
Hi, thanks, G. Daniel from the Royal Society. Also on Horizon Europe, would you, should Labour win the next election, and we've already kicked off Plan B, would you reverse that and then try to seek to renegotiate to join Horizon Europe? Okay,
now that's I understand that why you're asking that question, but I don't know when the next election is going to be. I don't know what Plan B would look like, and I don't know what the Horizon programme would look like. So I can't make a commitment to what we would negotiate or renegotiate now. We would probably seek to do that near the time of an election. But I think you've heard what I think about Horizon, what Labour thinks about Horizon. It's the world's biggest, I should say also that just in the intervening time, depending on how long that is before we get a Labour government, so we'd have to look at what damage had been done to existing international relationships and what, in collaborations and, in terms, so we'd have to look at it at the point, but it is the world's biggest science funding program, and the added value of all the international collaborations which it supports. And actually, I didn't mention particularly also the international collaborations with business as well, because businesses are often part of Horizon programs. So the added value of that, I think, is really hard to match in any other way.
Chief, thank you very much indeed.